This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening and welcome to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education Executive Budget Proposal, Budget Hearing and Board Meeting for March 26, 2019. To begin this evening, we have the opportunity for public participation. Any members of the public that are here in attendance are welcome to address the board on any matter. You can ask a question or make a brief statement. It doesn't have to be on an item that is on the agenda. We ask that you do raise your hand and be recognized, and when you come to the podium, I'll ask you to come to the podium to speak and give us your name and address. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board this evening in public participation? Okay, seeing that we have no one here for that this evening, I'm going to ask the board, please, for a motion to approve the agenda with the following amendments, if you will. We need to amend the agenda to add a new item 4, which would be approval of minutes of our March 12th meeting. And then after item 4, the new item 4, we will make a change slightly. Item 5 will become presentation of the executive budget in the order that's listed. But then item number 6 is going to become the will still remain, the Brighton Facilities Improvement Plan update. A new item number 7 will be the approval of the 2019 capital project vote proposition. And then a new number 8 will be approval of notice of the annual meeting, the budget vote, and the election. Those have to go in a certain order. And then that would make new item number 9, approval of the joint agreement. Item 10, approval of change orders, and then item 11, the consent agenda for the agenda. So with those changes, a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. To begin this evening, we welcome Dr. McGowan in our presentation of the executive budget proposal for the 2019-2020 school year.
We want to do approval of the minutes?
Oh, after I added that, then I just jumped right over it. Thanks, Mark, for paying attention. One moment. Dr. McGowan, a motion, please, for approval of the minutes from our March 12th meeting. Please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
And seconded by Andrea. Does anyone have any changes or additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Now we're back on track. Dr. McGowan.
Thanks for keeping the rebel rouser under control over there, Dr.
Oh, yeah.
Sachs. We appreciate it.
Kim's away and
That's right.
you know,
It is.
we're doing the best we can.
It's my pleasure to speak to you tonight to begin this process of introducing the executive budget proposal. And I say begin because this will really be done in a way in 2 parts. So I will make the proposal tonight, but because the state has not yet finalized the approved state budget, we'll have to ask you to adopt on April 9th and make adjustments between now and that point. And I'll explain some of the places where adjustments may need to be made. But this is the most up-to-date current status, information that you've heard along the way, kind of the combination of where does that leave us after gathering community feedback, gathering your feedback, and introducing pieces of the budget, doing a lot of analysis over the past several months. First, it's important to point out that we followed our key budget guidelines that you set back in October of this year, and that these really boil down to making sure that we are thinking about sustaining revenue sources, so not creating structural deficits in our budget process year to year, that we're honoring the priority areas, safety, security, wellness, rigorous coursework, creativity and innovation, diversity, equity, instructional technology, our budget being a value statement about those priorities that you focused the work of the district on for quite a long time and get reviewed annually by our Blueprint group. We also want to make sure that the budget provides all students with every opportunity to develop the skills necessary for that individual child to move on to college and a career and develop their talents to their maximum potential. Thinking about the current economic climate, changing student needs, you also recognize the importance of prioritizing resources, evaluating opportunities for reduction, and that you established back in October you'd look at those amounts in the projected budget as well, and that we would be thinking about an academic impact analysis if we had to make reductions, which we'll talk about tonight. And that we'd continue to implement strategies that meet our short and long-term goals for facility modernization, considering the volatile construction market, which has certainly been a challenge this year, and we have an item to mention about that this evening as well. Prudently planning also for the implementation of full-day K, and debt service, thinking about the impact of the 2017 vote for the Facilities Improvement Project, which we'll deal with as well in this evening's presentation, and understanding the impact of the property tax cap and what will happen long term. Again, a key component of tonight's presentation. So we think about the calendar. September, of course, so it wasn't October, I'm sorry, back in September when you adopted the budget guidelines and the calendar for this budget process. The process really, though, happening all the year through, really thinking about how we analyze our success in programs, what our students need, what types of programs we're looking at to grow and improve the following year. That happens year round. In January, we make the preliminary blueprint recommendations, of course, and then the budget development process really takes hold as we present to you the preliminary budget based on the governor's numbers and what we have from our budget makers in district at that point. In February, of course, we have a budget review, and you approved the final tax cap levy limit based on the state's law. We had a community budget forum in March, and we gave you an update again in March, another community budget forum, and then, of course, we're to tonight, the executive budget proposal. We'll gather feedback from you and make adjustments as we go into April 9th, based more than anything on what the state's approved budget will be. And again, we'll talk about the impact of state revenues in this budget as well. We have the annual budget hearing on May 14th, and on May 21st, we ask people to please come and vote the school budget vote at Brighton High School, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Kiwanis spaghetti dinner, an important aspect of the budget vote. What do we know and what do we still need to assess, and what have we been assessing? On the left-hand side of the screen is the what we know. We know that we have increased staffing demands because of enrollment, student needs, changing standards. We know that we have contractual labor increases that we've agreed to, but we also know that there's an increase in the minimum wage, which impacts our budget as well. We have an increase in health insurance rates, and due to the premium increases, but also the number of participants. We know those things. We know the pension contribution rates are beginning to increase. We had some reprieve in that, but they're beginning to increase again. And there's a multi-year impact of the capital project. That's a big piece of this, that debt service, and implementation of the full day K program, which will happen in the year 2021. So those are primary factors, along with, of course, the tax levy growth of the property tax cap. What do we need to assess, and what have we been looking at? Changes in our mandated services and education plans. Even in the past month, we've received significant impact to mandated programming for students. Student elective demands. What do our kids need in order to graduate? What do they want in order to have the experience that they're hoping for at our high school? How does that fit into their progression, their program? Changes in state and federal aids. The federal aid being grants, in particular, that third bullet, changes in federal funding. Significant changes proposed by the president in his budget, has yet to be acted upon by Congress, but there would be significant changes that could change our grant allocations from the federal government. We're planning for some of that change. There's a proposed cap on reimbursable aids that the governor has proposed, and these are the aids like transportation aid, building aid, things where we spend money and then get a defined amount back from the state. I'm going to say this a couple different ways, a couple different times. When we say aid, this is the state's mandated contribution to support a free and appropriate public education for every child. 9 out of 10 kids in this country attend a public school. It's the state's responsibility to provide for that. Aid is not this gift. Aid is what they are supposed to be providing for this mandated service to happen. School districts, the way the system is supposed to work based on their property wealth, are supposed to support that additional spending that they would like for their children in individual communities. So this is not a gift. This is what is supposed to be coming to you as taxpayers from your income tax, from sales tax, from the other revenue sources in the state. You and your children are entitled to this, of course. The other issue we need to be aware of is New York State deficit. Revenue projections are down at this point, and for us, it's a consideration of what does that mean in the final budget solution? How much will actually come through? What's the agreed upon number that they're using for revenue, and how does that impact school aid overall? And the impact of federal tax reform, particularly the SALT deduction, the cap on state and local tax deduction. And that particular tax does not come directly to us, but it impacts our taxpayers in terms of how much the value of one's property tax or school tax increase, what that means to them as an individual taxpayer. So previously, when you could make the argument that, well, there is some benefit to this because then that's a larger deduction for you, that changes now for some people in the adopted tax code, the changes in the tax code. So what are the action steps? We review programs, we assess needs, we developed the preliminary budget, looked at the governor's proposed budget, advocated with our elected representatives, of course had a lot of support from Fight for Brighton and many people in our community, advocating as well, whether it was the groups that I worked through and the Council of School Superintendents, school boards, and many of you and your work through the New York State School Boards Group, Judy Wegman through BTA and the NICIC group. Many people out there saying we need help and we need a fix. And that advocacy continues. It continued emails through this morning, and it will continue as the state continues to deliberate their budget throughout this week. As we said, we support community advocacy efforts as well. And then on the right-hand side, we look for efficiencies, and we continue to do so. Look at our budget to actual for this year to find efficiencies. So in other words, what we budgeted, and did we actually need that much in a particular line? So we can we trim back in that line because our planning for that line outpaced what we actually needed to spend. We gathered community feedback, of course, through the thought exchange, and reported those results out to you. What gave you a general sense for what most people who responded were thinking relative to what we should be spending money on and how people felt about taxes, the tax cap, etc. Provided a community update, have had a couple of community forums, and looked at our impact of reductions to programs, which we reported out to you previously as well, and looked at a list of potential options. In our last presentation, showed you 3 options for what we thought could happen relative to staying under the cap, going over the cap, what it would mean for postponing debt service, etc. Looked at different options along the way. Very much believe that budgets are value statements. What you are supporting and what the community eventually votes to support or not support in the budget are things that express who we are as an organization and what is most important to us relative to what we think we can afford and what we would like to spend money on. So where we're placing resources says something about the directions that we're going, and I think it's important to remember that. This budget is about the community making a statement about what they value. And depending on the choice that people make, they are certainly indicating that. In consideration of what their own ability to support it is, of course, financially too. It doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't feel they can afford it doesn't value something, but how much we value and how much we as an organization and you as a board value these items is definitely expressed by what you're presenting to the community. And so in our budget, we are right now proposing a budget that meets and exceeds state mandates to make sure we're supporting every child along the spectrum. Meets and exceeds. So what I mean by that is, and we'll mention this several times, our academic intervention services, our special education services, we do go above and beyond. Our extended studies program, our 6th grade foreign language, our musical program, instrumental program, at 4th grade. These are things that are not mandated by the state, but mandated by who we are and what we think is most important for kids and their development. The reason why the gaps have closed in achievement for our students and why so many of our kids are excelling and why kids in all different subgroups in our student population are excelling and achieving at very similar levels are because we do more and we find ways to do more, and our community has supported more beyond just the bare minimum for kids. This budget also provides funding in support of blueprint plans related to diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as safety and security. And safety and security in that area 2 different ways, both security staffing, but perhaps more importantly, or at least certainly on par, is the support for mental health services for our kids. And this budget supports that and supports increases in those areas. So the big 3 there that we want to focus on, of course, in terms of our value statement is diversity, equity, inclusion, and thinking about both mental health and security staffing, those being very important aspects of keeping everybody safe, healthy, and happy. And we respect our taxpayers and honor our commitments to them. And so this deals with the issue of needing to stay committed to our debt service, stay committed to respecting taxpayers, saying this is exactly where we're at, this is where we will be at, this is planning for something so we don't have a spike later on, namely full-day kindergarten and that debt service issue, and thinking about what we committed to relative to planning for full-day kindergarten and the passage of our project in 2017 and sticking to that process as well. This just gives you a sense in the expenditures trends area where the money is going. Of course, as we see costs increase, the largest area that they're increasing is in the instructional area, and this is in comparison of our Monroe 1 neighbors as to how much we're spending per student. We're right in the middle in a pretty good place. In other words, we're not spending exceptionally more per student, but we're not exceptionally less than other people either. And these dollar amounts, I know the print is very small, but they're very, very close. So we're right about where what other people spend, I guess is the point. Not spending exceptionally more, but being pretty reasonable about that as well. This shows you the trend in tax increases over time, and this is the pure per pupil percentage tax increase. So when we think about how our enrollment has gone up and how we've been able to try and minimize that impact, the enrollment going up on the impact of taxes for people, we've had a average increase over time in taxes per pupil of 2%. So that average tax over time since 2008 has been 2% when you consider that as a per pupil increase. Where does the executive budget break down? Where are we spending our money? Next year, we're looking at a 3.1% increase in the salary area. That doesn't mean that every salary is increasing 3.1%. Contractual arrangements are all over the board. What it means is our overall spending in that particular budget line, when looking at the number of people in the group last year, or this current year, into next year, the total amount being spent will go up 3.1%, divided up in all different ways. In the benefits area, we're down 0.8%, so 8.8% less next year, and that's due to changes in some of our benefits, including a very, very modest increase in the health insurance premium next year, attributed to being the community rated, in the consortium plan as opposed to a community rated plan, where we've been able to, by cooperating with other surrounding districts here in Monroe County, keep that cost increase from being too high for sure and keeping that much lower. Our supplies and services are up about $1.2 million. BOCES cost is up $152,000. And again, this debt service issue, it's the pay now or pay later, and it's much harder to pay it if we don't start paying it now, is a $1.2 million increase in the budget next year based on the approved project from 2017. But that's a 1.6% increase all on its own. The total spending increase would be 4.5%. If we were just in a normal year, without the increase in the debt service, we'd be looking at an increase of 2.9% in operations. So the general year-to-year spending increase would have been less than 3%. When we add in the debt service, that's what gets us up to an increase of 4.5%. What are we very proud of in this that we want to point out to you? Well, of course, on the left-hand side, the pieces that you've supported for a long time as a community: instructional leadership and professional development, the supportive programming here in the district that is we think really beneficial in terms of continuing to build our skills and best meet the needs of our students, in terms of the great embedded staff development that's provided by teachers here in the trenches working on the ground level to provide that support. Our coaching supports, our academic intervention supports. Of course, I mentioned to you that idea of we give more and we do more for students above the mandate. Summer school offerings, same idea. Class size course offerings, keeping class sizes relatively small. We have some increases in the budget being proposed tonight, but relatively small in terms of class sizes compared to other places. The team teaching structure at the middle school really allows people to work on a team with students, collaborating each day. As a matter of fact, the team teaching approach where teachers are meeting each day to talk about the group of kids that they are assigned to is a very valuable opportunity at the middle school. Our interscholastic athletic opportunities, which are many for our students, including our co-curricular, extracurricular opportunities in the arts and other clubs and activities, which we think are so important for keeping kids connected to school in the ways that interest them the most. And transportation services, which we've mentioned before, providing transportation for all of our kids who attend our schools, but our kids who also attend private parochial schools. We are mandated to provide a certain level of transportation. We do go above and beyond that, that being one of very few services that students not attending our public schools, the 4 buildings here, are able to take advantage of, despite the fact that their parents are not sending them here every day. Those are on days off. For private parochial schools, we still provide transportation. Again, one of very few services that families are able to take advantage of and we feel strongly about. On the right-hand side, we have dedicated in this spending plan an equivalency for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So an increase in the staff member amount for that. That's been Marlo Washington working with us this year as a consultant, and we'll think next year about how to look at staffing for a diversity, equity staff member and determine what that job would be, what that title would be, et cetera, and how much that would be, but we have funded that in the budget for right now. Expanding the Family Navigator program at the high school, and it looks as though we will be able to add, and what we're proposing to is a K-12 position actually for Family Navigator, increasing really the model coming full circle, what used to be our Family Support Center, now looking at that as a K-12 position to help in all 4 buildings and be a family liaison throughout the district, supporting again the mental health needs of our students and their families. Additional full-time equivalencies to expand services for our English as a new language students. 2.5 positions are budgeted for that. That's a mandated service, but one that's provided very well in this district and has a big impact. Our kids typically in the NL area do very, very well because of the service provided by that department. We're looking to enhance our school safety staffing model by adding 3 security guards as well, And of course, as I mentioned, continuing the planning for full-day kindergarten for 2021, and the tax impact, the debt service for the 2017 capital project, which we should not delay starting funding for that. So in all of this, we are in a situation where we need to think about and propose to you exceeding the tax cap. And we want to explore with you and mention to you again, as we have in previous meetings, the advantages and the disadvantages to that. First of all, on the advantages side, to go over the tax cap means we will be able to preserve, program, and avoid significant reductions. We would also be able to fully fund that local share from the 2017 project and start that process of paying for that debt so that it is not exceptionally more going into the following year. It spreads the tax levy limit to allow for funding full-day K. So we're adding those positions in, which we need to, of course, going into the future, or there would be a spike later on when we have to add all those staff positions. And it increases the levy base for future budget. So by the levy being a little bit larger now, the percentage in future budget years increasing over a larger base is better, right? So at some point that grows a little bit overall, and it's important sooner rather than later, because it then provides some cushion to be able to stay within the cap in future years. The disadvantage is the tax increase is applied earlier in the project, so we're starting to take that debt on sooner. Again, we mentioned how important that is, but that's certainly one that somebody could say, well, that's a downside. Overall tax increase as well, to the point where somebody might say, well, that's great that you're saying you want to increase the tax base by increasing taxes a little bit more so that it grows incrementally. Well, one could also look at that as a disadvantage. That means that your 2% on top of a higher tax is a little bit more than 2% on a lower tax, of course. And then the loss of the property tax rebate check in 1920, which is a significant concern and one that we've really labored with quite a bit, and we'll explain what we think that impact is for taxpayers. But that is certainly the disadvantage that the state has created in this. Excuse me, the impact then on property taxes. What does all this mean? On the left-hand side of the bar chart that's on the left-hand side of your screen, you see a $127 increase. That would be if, and only if, on a $220,000 home, we were to increase the amount equal to the tax cap number. So if we said we're staying within the cap, we'd have an increase of $127. That's on a home value of $220,000. The next bar over to the right shows you that $127, which would essentially be operations, right? If we had a normal budget year, we'd be able to just come in at the cap like we have in previous years. What we're saying is to fund that debt service as well. We're looking at another $138 in this executive budget proposal over and above that $127. So the total tax impact being more than that because we need to fund both of those pieces, both operations and the debt service. And this is, again, based on that average increase that we had previously talked about on a home valued at $200,000 of $144. Now notice also, this is $138, not $144, so it's a little bit less than that number, but our community at a home value of $200,000 had originally voted on a potential tax increase, an anticipated tax increase of $144. So we're taking that on now in addition to that operations increase at the same time. And this just shows you essentially what could happen if we were to delay that. So the blue column right here is the debt service. This would be have to be added on top in 2021, and it's a much, much bigger lift. We're looking to take some of that off at this point and level that out over time. So this is the issue of the property tax relief credit, in other words, the check that people have been getting. And what does it mean if we go over the cap and you can't get your check? So the information that we've been provided is if you make your combined household income is $75,000 or less, you would get a rebate check equal to 85% of your STAR savings. The max STAR savings is $794. So in other words, if you are making $75,000 or less combined household income, you would get 85% of a maximum of $794. But whatever your STAR savings currently is, and again, the max being $794. So that depends all on the value of your house, which it's impossible for us to project the value of somebody's home or know with certainty for the entire community what that is. But the $794 is the max star, and you would lose 85% of that. If your income is between $75,000 and $150,000, your relief check is 60% of, again, a max of $794. $150,000 to $200,000, 35%. And if your income, combined household income, is between $200,000 and $275,000, your check was only equal to 10% of a max of $794 or $79.40. And that's what people would lose. So it's complicated depending on the amount of, again, your household income and the value of your home, how much your star savings is. So it really impossible to project unless people themselves, individuals, think about the value of their home, what their max star savings is, and what their household income is. Use that percentage to get a sense for what that check is. What we have found is for many taxpayers, that's less than what would be anticipated. It is a penalty. It is something that every individual has to decide for themselves what that penalty is for their home. What are the trends in the tax cap for us? And this goes back to our original conversations around the tax cap back to 2012-13, where we were able to go to our community with a tax increase $584,000 or about 1.25% under the cap number. This is really important to point out because at this time we said to people, we're not going to go right out of the cap number every year, which is what most districts and municipalities have done. We said, no, we're only going to go and ask for what we need, not maximize the ability to grow the levy as big as we could so that your increases over time would be over again a bigger amount. In the following year, we were also able to stay under the cap by $439,000, which was almost 1% on the levy. But the year after that, we went back to the community, 14-15. So this is not unprecedented for us, and said, you know, we were able to stay under the cap the last 2 years. We have to go back out over the cap at this point. In fact, the dollar amount over the cap, $707,000, was less than the cumulative amount over time that we had been under the cap. And our community at that time was very supportive of that. It seemed to make sense, that discussion with the community. When we presented, here's what we need, here's why we need it, and this is what we've done relative to this conversation around the tax cap each year. And looking then in 15-16, 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, because of the lack of foundation income to the district, we had to be right at the cap number. And you definitely bore that burden. We were able to keep the tax increases by percent, though relatively low throughout that time. As I said, if you think since 2008, our tax increase has only been the per pupil increase of 2%. So we did keep that very low, but it had to be at the cap number. And now we're coming back like we did in 14-15, saying to the community, we now need to go back over the cap, and here's why. Here's what the impact on program is if we're under the cap, and here's how the state's revenues are playing a role in our need to go over the cap. So what have we done since the preliminary budget? When we told you there could be potentially, to keep all programming, a 7.5% increase in the property tax levy. We're not at that point at all. So what have we done? Well, first we've had to adjust for mandated services, and this was the amount that I mentioned to you. For particular programs for students, we've seen a nearly $600,000 increase. Nearly $600,000 just since we presented to you in January. And this is in particular tuitions for particular programs and services required for students of nearly $600,000. We do not begrudge that service for a moment to our students. We do not regret that. We're not upset about that. That is the reality, though. That's the number for you to be aware of. Those are required services for students. We've made adjustments to our budget, actual projections, risk provisions. In other words, those have been reductions in some of those areas so that we could fund other programming. We've changed our revenue assumptions. We've also made reductions in our equipment and our department budgets, our capital allocations, our class size adjustment course offerings, made some small reductions, which we'll discuss tonight as well, grades 7 through 12, and K through 5. Not wholesale program changes, not cutting extended studies or foreign language or the instrumental music, any of the non-mandates that we talk about all the time, but having to look at class size, in particular some of the offerings that we have overall. Some of our breakage from retirements have helped in this area as well, put us a little bit further to the green. Remove some of the new positions that we added for enrollment, in other words, class size potential reductions as kids were getting into 7 through 12, and made some adjustments for anticipated, there's still an increase, but anticipated occupational education programs. So we are still increasing that area, but less so than from the preliminary budget previously presented. This is just an object summary in the on the spending side. Salaries, benefits, as I mentioned, the salaries going up 3.1%, but the benefits going down 0.8%. That means in total, we're only up 1.6% in the salary benefit area total and overall. Again, that's not a dollar amount for people's salaries. That's the amount of spending in that area. The other important numbers to point out are around instructional materials and services. A lot of this has to do with our additions in the technology area in particular, supporting students in many new and different ways, exciting, innovative programming, but it does require an increase in spending in that area, and transportation services. So you'll see an increase of spending by over 11% in this area. You will see a corresponding decrease in the BOCES budget because we've taken on the transportation for some of our students with special needs that was previously provided by BOCES. And the debt and transfer, again, that's the $1.2 million or the increase in the debt service for the 2017 project. So that increases our debt service nearly 70%. Remember, we need to get a car payment in the budget. We did not have a car payment because we had paid off the car a long time ago. We need to put it back in so we have that placeholder and that money spent to reinvest in our facilities. What are the factors impacting our salaries? That budget line at the top, which is our largest spending area, as it should be. It's our investment in the people that do such great work. Our contractual minimum wage adjustment, contractual and minimum wage adjustments, it's a 1.6% increase. The new positions proposed are $325,000, and that's enrollment at 6th grade. That's a one full-time equivalency. We have 2.4 positions budgeted for ENL staffing and SIF spending, student interrupted with education interrupted as well. Those are mandated services. Diversity and equity position that I mentioned to you of 0.4 FTE. The family navigator position will go from 0.4 to 1.0. And our proposals related to safety, security, wellness, which were 3 full-time equivalencies for security staff. We'll continue to plan for full day K. That's an increase of $113,000. And make adjustments in the grants of $50,000. That's putting part of a staff member back into the back into the budget from the grants because of federal government changes in the grant funding, and eventually that funding will disappear. We want to protect ourselves from that when it happens, that revenue source. The proposed staffing reductions we're discussing are class size and electives 7 through 12. So removing the new funding for enrollment adjustments. So again, this is from the preliminary budget where we said to you we needed this number of positions for enrollment. We're taking those out of the proposal at this point. Then class size adjustments, we're going in grade 1 from 19.4 to 21.12. We wish we could stay under 20 and be a little bit smaller. We do not have an option while still being able to maintain any balance in this budget, of course. So we do have to reduce a section there. And grade 2 will go from 20 to 21.78. Again, we value small class size. These are not insurmountable. These are challenges, but they are certainly manageable challenges and still being able to provide an excellent program for our kids. And our class size and electives at the 7 through 12 level, we will have to reduce somewhat as well in those positions, not knowing yet which programs until schedules are complete, and we can look at what sections we are funding and what level of funding we can provide based on enrollment in each of the course areas. So we'll make adjustments along the way at the 7 through 12 area as well. Just to give you an idea of what does that mean, of course we have 11 sections this year in first grade. We'll stay at 11 next year. We have 12 in second grade now. It will be 11 going into next year, which means the class size will go to 21.8. It currently this year is 22.7. So it's actually a little bit smaller for second graders next year than the second graders this year. The first graders this year, who will be second graders next year, will go up though a little bit in their class size. Again, for that grade level, for the staff, the size is a little bit smaller. But the kids who are transitioning from first to second grade, their class will be slightly larger than it was this year as first graders. And at the fifth grade level, we currently have 13 sections. It will go to 12, but the class size actually at that grade level will go down slightly. For those students coming from fourth grade, it goes up just a little bit, not very much, just 0.5, of course. The half a child's always tricky at that grade level. Factors impacting benefits, of course, we take a look at over time what has happened in our health insurance rates. Just increased 1.1%, but based on attrition in the group, it requires no additional funding going into next year, which is a very, very good thing. The factors impacting the BOCES budget, as I mentioned to you, a couple things we want to point out. The business technology services we take advantage of and are aided on are up 6.4%, including professional development. Big increase here in occupational education of 22%. By percentage, big increase, but dollar amount, $79,000. This is, though, for programming for students interested in occupational ed programming at BOCES. They run a really great shop and provide a lot of really interesting programs for students interested in those, and we would like to be able to provide that opportunity for our kids. In the instructional technology area, we're up 37%, but again, it's $111,000, and that's as we continue to look at 21st century implementation, and we purchase our instructional technology through BOCES. We are down 16% in transportation. Remember, that was the balance of transitioning our special needs transportation from a BOCES provider to in-district contract transportation. And that was because BOCES could no longer provide the service to us. They did not have the capacity to do so. It was not a financial decision, of course, going into this year. Our other budget factors as well, we just want to point out, remember I mentioned to you the nearly $600,000 increase in special education contracts, tuition, programming costs, up $572,000, most of that very recently. Health services that we pay to other districts for students who are attending there, $109,000. Contract, that's for Brighton students attending private parochial schools outside of our district who are in other districts. We have to pay for health services to the tune of $109,000. And contract transportation, again, as I mentioned, because we're taking that cost on. And once again, that $1.2 million, which is the capital increase, the debt service increase. Where is it coming from? We recognize most of it is coming from local property taxes, 67%. This percentage should be much smaller because this percentage here, foundation aid, should be much bigger. We'll talk about that in just a moment. We are proposing a tax levy increase of 4.89%, and the cap is 2.34. Again, this is assuming, and this is a big assumption I want to point out to you, it is assuming that we will receive 52.5% of our foundation aid. The governor proposed 49.3%. This is based on our conversations with legislators, with legislative aides, reading any tea leaf, fortune cookie, Cracker Jacks box, anything that we can possibly try and figure out what will the dollar amount be. It's much better informed than a fortune cookie. Unfortunately, the budget process in Albany is mystical enough that it sometimes feels like that. We are talking with them constantly trying to get a handle on the number. If this number changes, we will be coming back to you with additional changes on April 9th. Let me say that again. If the state budget does not honor at least this number, we will be coming back to you with additional changes, and those changes will be cuts to program, period. There is nowhere else to go at this point. So I don't mean to sound threatening, just being realistic. We will have to make additional changes and reductions if this number doesn't come through. We're very hopeful based on the Assembly proposal that was at 53%, the Senate slightly below that, and we've tried to meet somewhere in the middle, trying to anticipate what their negotiations might look like, and we've bet on that number. We will keep you posted as soon as the state's budget is approved as to what the foundation aid number ends up being. Why does that matter? Back in the day, when we first started to have this conversation, we were receiving just 44% of our foundation aid. So in the total amount that was supposed to be paid to Brighton, based on the state's adopted formula that takes into account the number of kids we have, the number of kids with special needs, the number of kids living in poverty, the number of kids with English as a new language for their program, et cetera, we were supposed to be paid a certain dollar amount. We were only getting 44%, but similar districts with the same combined wealth ratio, so in other words, the same ability to pay, were receiving 81% of their foundation aid. And we made the case back in that time that we needed some kind of equity in that it was entirely unfair. And because of unique circumstances with our student population, having unique factors in the formula that drove our number up differently than other people, we were unfairly affected when they capped, very arbitrarily, certain pieces of that to accomplish a political solution. In other words, dividing the money up the way politicians wanted to throughout the state. Where that landed us was in 2017-18, through the help of Majority Leader at the time Morelli and Senator Robach, Fight for Brighton, and many advocates in this room, we were able to achieve a $1.1 million increase in aid at that point. A separate tier in the state aid formula was carved out exclusively for our one district in one tier. There were 4 tiers. We were the one district in Tier B that got $1.1 million. We qualified for that. The problem is the governor in his proposal, it was line 7, and it said if you have this factor, this factor, this factor, this is what you should get. We were the only ones of the 700 districts that had that factor. The governor in his proposal took an eraser and got rid of it. Crossed it out, deleted it, white out, whatever metaphor you want to use. Got rid of it. And it said the line will not be used. So in other words, it disqualified us from getting that exception again. That $1.1 million stayed in the base, or that blue amount right there. It didn't get taken away, but any ability for that to grow, based again on the formula telling us it should grow every year, was eliminated. The orange and blue put together in this chart is what we should be getting, and we are only getting the blue. The governor, in fact, only proposed an increase of $76,000. The amount due to us increased $1.47 million. The formula says it should have gone up $1.47 million. And the governor proposed just $76,000. So now there's an $8 million gap between what the state should be paying and what they're proposing to pay going into next year. Well, how does this compare with other people? So we have a set of, or a tool, a software tool, that shows us statewide comparisons and picks districts that look like us. So if you're familiar with any of these districts, Bethlehem, for example, in the capital region, Orchard Park back in the Buffalo area, these are districts that are similar to us in achievement, a little bit bigger than us in terms of size, but similar in some other ways. Most notably, if you look at the combined wealth ratio. Combined wealth ratio is the property wealth in a community in a ratio to the income wealth. So when you file your income taxes and you say what school district you're in, that's how they figure out how much wealth there is in a community, and they give you a number. And the number 1 is average. So Mahopac would be an average need district in the state. We are just below that, 0.953. To give you an example, locally, Pittsford is 1.3. Bethlehem is 1.07. Orchard Park is 1.070. So pretty close to us. So Orchard Park is supposed to get $17.2 million based on, again, their enrollment, E&L, special education, free and reduced, etc. They're scheduled to get $15.9 million, or 92% of their total allotment. Bethlehem, $17 million, scheduled to get $12.7 million, or 74.9%. Brighton, $16.2 million, only scheduled to get $8 million. 49% of the aid due based on the governor's proposal. That to me is criminal, and it is unexplainable. So every person we talk to in Albany says, well, yeah, that's the way it is. That doesn't seem like a very thoughtful answer to me. It's not that the people we are working with are not thoughtful in working with us and advocating for us. There is just no good explanation for this other than the regional disparities and the desire for politicians to tweak this formula to distribute aid using a shares concept across the state to make sure that New York City gets its share, Long Island gets its share, Western New York gets its share, Central New York gets its share. The problem is when you make those adjustments, you ignore the factors that might drive up our share higher because our need might be more. You're ignoring the whole point of having a formula in the first place and making it a political formula as opposed to a needs-based formula. And that's what's happening. What does all this mean for us on our property tax levy here? We have proposed, again, are proposing a percentage in the tax levy increase of 4.89%. What does that mean then for our community? On a home valued at $220,000, in the town of Brighton, $266, and in the town of Pittsford, $266. So the tax increase on a home valued at $220,000 would be $266. We also are proposing to the community a withdrawal of $3 million from the Capital Reserve Fund. The current balance is $9,600,283. And essentially we're asking to be authorized to withdraw $3 million from the district's existing 2015 Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of paying additional costs associated with the district's capital improvement project approved by the qualified voters of the district at a proposition held on May 16, 2017. And that allows us to start work at French Road this summer. So this was money that was already in our reserves that can go and towards our local share right now to get work done at French Road that we would like to accomplish this summer. We also would like to withdraw from our technology reserve fund. It's really important to point out that both of these, the capital and the technology, can be used for nothing else. It can't be used. These designated reserves that voters approved and set up several years ago as an account for this purpose can't be used to pay for anything else. It can't be used to reduce taxes. It is, in a sense, reducing taxes because we're not going out and asking for this expense to be covered by the tax levy. But it can't be used to cover instructional programming or anything else in the general fund. We'd like to withdraw we have $1.5 million in the Technology Reserve Fund, and we're asking to withdraw $500,000. That continues our 21st century program as well. The one-to-one programming at the secondary level, infrastructure in terms of switches for closets, the cabling upgrades, wireless infrastructure, storage for our virtual servers, laptop replacements, and device replacements K through 7, as well as district AV hardware replacement. So the summary is we're asking to spend 4.5% more next year, but 2.9% of that is the normal every year increase in the operations budget of 2.9%. 1.6 is capital, that debt service that we need to begin to take on. And it reflects our investment in the blueprint priority areas that you've endorsed and that our blueprint committee works on each year, as well as every staff member. Response to mandated increases in spending and our continued investment while trying to minimize our impact to students. It also honors that 2017, again, the facilities improvement project that our voters did approve. It reflects what we value. If you think about those items that I mentioned to you, we feel very strongly about in terms of adding staffing and programming in the diversity equity area, adding staffing and programming in the family navigator, but the mental health support area, and the security area, in addition to being able to keep the things that make Brighton Brighton. We feel very strongly about it being a value statement about who we are and what we value in this community. Not taken lightly at all in terms of being over the cap, and we'll continue to advocate for more funding to try and bring that number down as far as we possibly can. We'll assess the impact of the final state budget. We're hopeful that a week from now we will have a state budget that we'll be able to be discussing. Ask you to adopt then an adjusted budget on the 9th of April. The budget hearing is on the 14th. The budget vote, spaghetti dinner, on the 21st, of course, as well at Brighton High School. Questions for me? You can say that again.
Take a breath and take a drink of water. Questions? Anybody from the board have anything further they want to add or ask?
I would just, the important point you make is you can't slide money from the reserve to do whatever we want. It's specifically controlled. And I just think that can't be overemphasized.
Yeah, and that's also why it's voted on separately. I mean, if a community member did not want us to use that money, it still could not go towards the other side of the budget at all.
That's a good point. And, it's one of those things, too, that reminds me, even in a year that's not as challenging as this year, of course, we haven't had one of those in a long time, but it's important that we remind folks that live in the community to please pay attention to what we're discussing. All the material is online. The agenda for tonight's meeting is there. That material stays there. The budget area, the website continues to get built upon and updated as more information becomes available. And it's really important, we try very, very hard to communicate not only some of the rules and regulations, as you say, Larry, with regard to what reserve funds can be used for, but also the situation with state funding, which is very difficult to understand because it's inexplicable, quite frankly. And but we're trying to message to the community on an ongoing, nearly daily basis right now. We appreciate the Citizens Action Group, Fight for Brighton, and all the work that they're doing, trying to, again, motivate our residents around information and to contact our state leaders to advocate for an improvement to the situation. We, you and I and Lou and all of us continue to do that with all of our contacts in Albany, and we'll continue to do that on a near daily basis also. But it's really, really important, I think, that everyone in the community be fully cognizant of what we're talking about, what we're discussing, what options we have available to us, which are really relatively few, to protect what we do value and why people live here and why we are who we are. So we'll continue to work on that. Thank you to Lou for all the work that he's been doing, generating new charts and graphs and diagrams nearly daily, hourly. And to you, Kevin, for all the advocacy work that you're doing on telephone, in person, and email with folks who represent us and who work for us in Albany and trying to get them to pay attention. So more to come. We do remind that essentially the budget vote is 8 weeks from today. When we meet again on the 9th, that we are scheduled to adopt a budget by the 1st or so. If they're not late, we will know very definitively what is in that final state budget, so we will have a definitive number as far as revenue to us from the state, so.
I often joke about the things you like. Feel free to let me know, and the things you don't like, Lou decided to do. But I do want to thank Lou, again, reiterate what you said, for his financial leadership. And we wouldn't be able to get to this point and figure this out without total disaster if it was not for that leadership, too. And to all the budget makers who are here, because it's awfully difficult for principals and directors to have this constant conversation. Well, what about this? Can you do this? Can you cut this? Can you do this? And they're constantly looking at how they can do that, while always thinking about and expressing the impact to kids and the staff members that they work with. So I appreciate all their work on this also.
That's a good point. And it does remind me also of a message I think that we've tried to give the community, and I mentioned, I think to you previously, that I've had a couple of conversations with a particular individual with regard to our situation who, doesn't quite understand why are we here again. And it is hard to explain, but one of the things that people need to understand, and you highlighted the cap that entered our life a while back. And, year over year, school districts have dealt with this because they've tightened margins. They've spent from reserves. They've spent from surplus funds. We've pruned around the edges, all of us, not just Brighton. Those days are over. We've tightened this up to the point where, given our unique situation, at the end of the day, repeatedly over the last few years, the state has adopted a budget that has given districts enough money to keep getting by. And that it doesn't work like that anymore, especially in our unique situation. And we don't have those other elements at our disposal anymore to be able to do that without making additional adjustments and cuts. So we're hopeful. We don't know, and we'll continue to work on that part of it. So anything further from everybody this evening on that?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. McGowan.
You bet.
And again, to members of the community who may have watched this tonight or see this at another time on the YouTube channel or see budget material sent to them, please feel free to call us, email us with questions, either to Dr. McGowan, to Mr. Limo, directly to me, or any board member. We're happy to have a conversation about the situation and the factors that we are all going into a decision that has to ultimately be made. So, all right, moving along then tonight, we also are happy to be receiving an update on our Brighton Facilities Improvement Plan. And I will turn it over to Lou. We have some of our guests from our construction team here this evening. Lou?
Good evening. So this is a reminder of what you're getting for the money that Dr. McGowan talked about. So we have, tonight we have Gary Huffman and John Limbeck, our project executive team, to give you an update on the progress of the construction project. As you recall, in 2017, our voters approved $64.9 million worth of work. A big portion of that is the expansion of Council Rock and the reprogramming of that school to accommodate a full-day K through 2 program. But work is being done in all of the schools. As Dr. McGowan said, we're asking for the reauthorization so we can complete the work that was promised to the voters at French Road. Just one quick correction, I don't want to scare Allison, that work is not going to be done this summer. We have to get voter authorization and then we'll rebid that work. So I didn't want to get her nervous that she needs to regroup with her entire team here. We're working on that. We will repackage it, but that reauthorization is really important so we can do everything that we said we were going to do. So I'll ask Gary to come up first and provide an update on the Council Rock side of the project. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Limo, Dr. McGowan, and Board of Education. Thank you for the opportunity. I am here this evening to give you an update. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I have a cold, so my audio is not working correctly in my head. So I am here to give you an update on Council Rock this evening, and I'm going to go to the next slide. And we started work at Council Rock a few weeks ago, and we've accomplished many things already, and the winter has been favorable, even though it's been a tough one. We have tackled the underground utilities, that is, we had to reroute the storm and sewer utilities underground to accommodate the future addition, and we have completed the temporary staging area as well. In the last few weeks, we've done that. We are going to be coming up on working on the building pad And we're going to start the foundations for the south addition, the new classroom addition. And in just a minute, we're going to see some pictures too of the work that's going on. Give you a 6-month look ahead. We are going to be starting and constructing the south classroom addition. We'll be converting the auditorium to a temporary cafeteria facility, as we'll be taking the current cafeteria offline this summer to do that addition that goes out the front of the building. In that auditorium, we're going to be accommodating also temporary kitchen, temporary nurses suite, along with some permanent office, semi-permanent offices and toilet rooms. We're also going to establish a new temporary main office and student entrances. That's going to be effective with the renovations that are coming up shortly. And we are going to implement temporary intermediate steps to keep all the whole building systems functional. We have to keep all the life safety operational, fully operational student staff. That's the fire alarm, master clock, the PA, data systems, everything that goes into the daily function of the building for safety and security. Pictures as promised. So we are doing the storm and sewer lines. They go around the east and south borderlines of the property now. The existing ones had to be removed so that we could, abandoned and removed eventually, so that we could accommodate for this new addition that's going in. Substantial pipes, substantial structures are going in, being constructed. These are all things you won't see because they're all below grade. Nothing more exciting than pipe. And some of those downspout rerouting as well.
The fun stuff is yet to come, but this all has to be done first.
It does, yes, it does. And so this is our temporary staging area that was constructed, and I stress temporary because eventually it will come out. But it's there for now for the function of building the addition. It's where materials will be staged and the office trailers will be located. And then it's just a simple graphic identifying all the pipe you just saw, or all the purple lines. It's quite a bit. This marginalizes the intensity and the quantity of what has been done, but it is significant. Any questions on Council Rock?
Just one addition to that, as you can see, the amount of site work that's been done so far, you're not going to see that at the end of the project, but just recognition to the neighborhood, and that's a lot of work. It's a lot of disruption in the neighborhood. This is a heavy part of it. We have an upcoming community forum to talk about the next phase, which is the building of the foundation pad. That will be disruptive work, and we just appreciate the support of the neighborhood, and as much as we ask for patience, it's pretty disruptive neighborhood. So I just wanted to recognize that on their behalf. So with that, I'll invite John Lynn back up.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
Good evening. Thanks again for the opportunity to provide an update. In your packet, we've put in the phasing plans for the middle school and the high school, and I'm not going to go through each one of these. I just wanted to highlight instead critical work that we're planning on doing this summer. At the middle school, we are going to get the kitchen and the cafeteria completely replaced, new equipment, new fixtures, and we're also focusing on a handicapped ramp that's going to be installed at the entranceway to the cafeteria. Again, all of these are in your packet. What these show are the different areas that we're going to be working on over the next 3 years. The high school is the same. We've got a 3-year program there, but our key activities, RG&E has decided that the district needs a new transformer to feed the high school. So we're working with RG&E to develop the plans to get 10 new 4-inch conduits from a brand new transformer on Winton Road under the driveway and into the building, and all new switchgear to feed the systems within the high school. Our other key activity is going to be the auditorium retrofit. We take that over on April 15th and plan on having that for 6 months. So we're hoping that we have a real nice facility for the district when we're complete. We are doing one piece of work at French Road this summer. I did not put French Road into the program We are going to be doing the asbestos abatement on the roof and replacing that roof section to get that taken care of this summer. Now, Lou, how can I make this bigger? What I'm showing here are the issue logs that we create for the project. Perfect. What we did earlier in the project, we introduced the board and the district to our issue logs. And we create an issue at any point in time that we have a situation that may have an impact on cost or schedule. And we track these issues. These become the basis of any further action on that issue or that situation. It could be a change order, it could be a credit back to the district, it could have a schedule impact. But we develop these issue logs so that we can track what we're running to on the site, and it also helps us protect our contingency so that we know where we're at with the project. This is the council rack. I don't want to get into a lot of the numbers because it would probably bore most of the people, but we'll get through this. This is for the capital project phase 1 and phase 2 at the other 3 buildings. What I'm more concerned with, we have a summary slide. I'm going to try to reach to that here, Lou. So I'd like to get that whole slide on.
You need more than that?
Yeah, if I can show the whole slide. Perfect. So because we're keeping both sides of the project separate, because we've got a separate architect on each project and we've got different budgets, what we do is we produce one bridge summary sheet for Lou and his staff at the end of each month. And what this does, this lays out what we have for the phase 1 contracts, what we have for the Council Rock project, and what we have for the phase 2 contracts. And then the different categories that we've got. This is our overall capital contingency budget right here. This is approved change orders that we've had to date. This column here feeds directly off of our issue log, where we show what we're tracking in pending changes dollar-wise. And then this would show what the remaining capital contingency is. So again, both projects are running along the same format. We're developing the same issues, providing the same financial reports every the end of every month, and then we meet monthly with the Larry Davis represents the board, Lou Alimo and his staff. So it's been very successful. We've had phenomenal support from Dr. McGowan, from the board, from Lou Alimo and his staff, and especially the principals who are getting quite an education in construction right now. So, are there any questions that I can answer for you tonight?
Nice.
We appreciate the updates, John, and Larry does keep us posted, certainly Lou does, but thank you to our extended thanks to the entire team. Well underway all over the place. We appreciate it, and we appreciate being updated and things being taken care of on a timely basis. So that's the only way to keep a project of this length and magnitude on scale and on schedule, so thank you.
I'd say this, foremost in all of these conversations is there's a huge focus on regular student and staff safety. Like, it's all the time, like security, the whole thing. It's always a focus, and I greatly appreciate about John and Gary and the teams. There's never any compromise with any of that stuff, so I've appreciated that all along. We've also really involved our facilities team. John, Rob, Kevin, all those guys are involved in decisions, making recommendations and things. Their input and experience has been invaluable to what we're doing.
That's fantastic. And you're right, that is priority one, and as Lou added, our neighbors, especially at Council Rock, and making sure that we keep them posted in the loop, and we appreciate their patience, and we're going to continue to ask for that for a while, so thank you. Thanks again, John, appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, thanks, Lou. All right, then, next up, we have a few items of business related to the upcoming election and propositions and things. First up, our item number 5, or I'm sorry, item number 7 on the agenda. And I'm going to also, looking at this again, I think I want to change language a little bit. So a motion to approve item number 7 to read approval of 2019 capital reserve proposition. Because technically they are the withdrawals from those reserve accounts that Dr. McGowan outlined that we're approving tonight in a formal way that we need to. So with that, may we have a motion to approve that, please?
So moved.
Second?
Approved by Karen, moved by Karen and seconded by Larry. And again, these are the two resolutions. It's a resolution is to add proposition number 1 and proposition number 2, well, number 2 being the technology withdrawal, to the ballot to be voted on May 21st, 2019. We don't need anything further on that, I don't believe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next up then, in companion with that, I seek a motion, please, to approve both the notice prepared by our district clerk on the annual budget vote and election, and also on the list of election inspectors for the annual district vote, as prepared also by Kim.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Andrea and seconded by Christina. Any questions, comments further on that? You'll see that's sort of legalese on the annual budget vote and election. The specific notices are there, and those will be published in all the legal proper places, newspapers and such, and then also the inspectors for the vote itself. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next up again tonight, we want to seek a motion. This is now agenda item number 9. Motion, please, for approval of the resolution prepared by Lou approving the joint agreement for the 2019 BOCES 1 capital project.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Marv, seconded by Karen. This is that Lou had presented information to us previously on a couple of different occasions. This is our BOCES 1 capital improvement project, and this is the agreement by which that will be financed by all the component districts, and we intend to complete our share through reserve fund allocations and not additional borrowing as we've discussed. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. And then we have also a couple of change orders for approval. Motion, please, on budget item number 10, motion to approve the change orders with the latest change orders, architect and engineer services for the 2017 facilities improvement plan.
So moved.
Moved by Larry,
Second.
seconded by Marv. And again, we've had that, and it's well documented there. A couple of change orders, as will happen in an ongoing way with regard to a couple of items that were outlined in that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Then we have our consent agenda this evening, relatively short. A motion, please, to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Julie, seconded by Andrea. It does include tonight 2 different gifts we want to make note of. Thank you very much to Mr. James Ravel, to a gift of a number of hats to the theater department, wardrobe collection, visual and performing arts at Brighton High School, and also a gift from the Brighton Education Fund to supplement the Learning Alive supplemental reading and math classroom kit for Council Rock Primary School. So that's a purchase of that kit. So we thank those folks both for their gifts and for those, again, who support the Brighton Education Fund. We appreciate that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Board members, any other matters for this evening? Dr. McGowan, anything else this evening? Okay, then just again, a quick reminder, we next meet on April 9th in a business meeting and anticipated budget adoption, 7 p.m. here in this room. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Karen, seconded by Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.